What if the secret to thriving in today's chaotic world wasn't found in the latest self-help trend, but in a philosophy that's been tested for over 2,000 years? Picture this: ancient wisdom sharpened by time, offering clarity in moments of overwhelm, resilience in the face of setbacks, and a roadmap for living with intention. That's the power of Stoicism, not just as a historical curiosity, but as a practical toolkit for modern life. Think about Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who ruled one of the greatest empires in history, yet wrote private notes to himself about humility and self-control. Or Epictetus, born into slavery, who taught that true freedom comes from mastering our reactions. These weren't just philosophers, they were doers, and their ideas weren't meant to sit on a shelf. They were designed to be lived. Now, imagine applying that same clarity to your own life. What would change if you could face challenges with unshakable calm? How would your decisions shift if you focused only on what you can control, letting go of the rest? This isn't about suppressing emotions or grinding through life with a stiff upper lip. Real Stoicism is about seeing the world with clear eyes, choosing your responses wisely, and finding meaning even in the mundane. It's about recognizing that while we can't always control what happens to us, we can always control how we meet it. And in a world full of noise, distractions, and endless demands, that perspective isn't just helpful, it's revolutionary. So why does Stoicism matter now more than ever? Because at its core, it's not about escaping reality. It's about engaging with it fully, deliberately, and without fear. Whether you're navigating career setbacks, personal struggles, or simply the daily grind, these principles offer a way forward. And here's the best part: you don't need to be a philosopher to use them. The Stoics broke down their wisdom into simple, actionable practices. Small shifts in thinking that lead to big changes in how you experience life. This video is your guide to those shifts. We'll explore how to turn ancient insights into modern tools, how to cultivate resilience when things get tough, and most importantly, how to live with purpose, not by chance but by choice. Let's begin. The Stoics had a radically different way of thinking about purpose, one that had nothing to do with job titles, bank accounts, or social media milestones. To them, purpose wasn't something you chased in the outside world. It was something you built within yourself, brick by brick, through the daily practice of virtue. Think about how often we hear phrases like "find your purpose," as if it's a hidden treasure waiting to be unearthed. Stoicism flips that idea on its head. Your purpose isn't out there, it's in how you choose to show up moment by moment, regardless of circumstances. Seneca put it plainly when he wrote, "Life is long enough if you know how to use it." For the Stoics, using life well meant cultivating wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline, not because these traits lead to fame or fortune, but because they're the markers of a life well lived, no matter what happens around you. Modern definitions of purpose often tie it to external achievements: landing the dream job, buying the perfect home, or hitting some arbitrary benchmark of success. But here's the problem: those things are fragile, they can vanish overnight. Stoic purpose, on the other hand, is rooted in something unshakable: your character. Imagine two people stuck in traffic. One rages against the delay, griping about wasted time. The other accepts it calmly, using the moment to reflect or listen to an audiobook. Both face the same external event, but only one is aligned with Stoic purpose, because only one is exercising control over their response. That's the key distinction. Stoicism asks, what if your real purpose isn't about changing the world, but about mastering how you engage with it? This idea of alignment with nature might sound abstract at first, but it's surprisingly practical. The Stoics observed that everything in nature has a function. A vine grows toward the sun, a river flows downhill, and humans are no different. Our function: to reason well, act with integrity, and contribute to the common good. Unlike modern self-help that often glorifies personal ambition, Stoic purpose is communal. It's not just about what you gain, but what you give. Epictetus, who taught that we're all part of a greater whole, put it this way: what's bad for the hive is bad for the bee. In other words, your purpose isn't just yours, it's woven into how you serve others, even in small, everyday ways. So how do you live this out? Start by asking a different kind of question. Instead of "what do I want to achieve?" try "who do I want to be?" The first question ties your worth to outcomes. The second anchors it in choices you can always control. A Stoic doesn't measure their life by accolades or possessions, but by the quality of their actions, the honesty in their work, the patience in their relationships, the courage to face hardship without complaint. That's the unchanging core of Stoic purpose, a compass that points inward, not outward, guiding you not toward what's impressive, but what's meaningful. One of the most life-changing ideas in Stoicism comes from a former slave who became one of history's greatest teachers. Epictetus drew a line straight through human suffering and said, "Here's where your power ends and where it really begins." He called it the Dichotomy of Control, and it's shockingly simple. Some things are up to us and some things simply aren't. The catch: we waste enormous energy confusing the two. Picture this: you're stuck in a meeting where a coworker keeps derailing the agenda. You can't control their interruptions, but you can control whether you let frustration hijack your focus. That's the pivot point, the moment where Stoicism transforms from philosophy to practical superpower. Modern life bombards us with endless demands, from overflowing inboxes to unpredictable setbacks. The Stoic solution isn't to work harder at fixing everything, but to get brutally honest about what's actually within your influence. Think of it like weatherproofing your mindset. You wouldn't shout at the rain for ruining your picnic. You'd grab an umbrella or move indoors. Yet when it comes to traffic jams, flight delays, or someone else's bad mood, we often act like tantrum-throwing toddlers demanding the universe obey us. Epictetus called this fighting reality, and it's as effective as wrestling a tidal wave. Here's where this ancient tool becomes a modern efficiency hack. Every time you catch yourself stressing over something outside your control, a rude comment, a missed promotion, even societal issues you can't single-handedly solve, you're pouring mental energy into a leaky bucket. The Stoic alternative: redirect that effort toward what you can actually shape: your preparation, your attitude, your next move. A salesperson can't force clients to buy, but they can perfect their pitch. A student can't dictate exam questions, but they can master the material. This shift doesn't just conserve energy, it unlocks focus for meaningful progress. Let's make this personal. Take workplace stress, where the line between "my responsibility" and "not my circus" often blurs. You can't control a micromanaging boss or a toxic colleague, but you can control how you prepare for interactions with them. You can't eliminate tight deadlines, but you can control breaking projects into manageable steps. Even in layoffs, one of the most destabilizing professional experiences, the Stoic perspective offers agency. You might not control the company's decisions, but you control updating your resume, reaching out to your network, or using the sudden free time to learn a new skill. The goal isn't passivity, it's precision in allocating your effort where it actually moves the needle. Now zoom out further. Social media thrives on outrage. Algorithms feed us endless things to be angry about that we'll never personally resolve. The Stoic asks, does obsessing over this headline make me wiser or stronger? If not, that's mental real estate better spent on actions that do. This isn't about apathy, it's about stewardship of your attention. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. So here's your challenge today. Spot one area where you've been conflating concern with control. Maybe it's fretting over a friend's life choices or refreshing a package tracking page every 5 minutes. What happens if, just for today, you place that issue firmly in the "not up to me" category and redirect that energy towards something you can actually improve: your patience, your knowledge, your next right action? That's the quiet revolution of the dichotomy of control. Not just thinking like a Stoic, but living with the relief of someone who's finally stopped trying to rearrange the ocean. There's a profound moment in Marcus Aurelius' private journal where he writes, "The obstacle becomes the way." 4 words that capture a Stoic secret so powerful, even Nietzsche borrowed it centuries later: Amor Fati, the love of fate. This isn't about passive resignation or plastering a fake smile over life's hardships. It's about recognizing that every setback, every detour, every so-called misfortune carries the seeds of something transformative if you're willing to embrace it. Picture Marcus ruling an empire plagued by war and illness, yet jotting down gratitude for the very challenges that honed his resilience. That's Amor Fati in action, not just enduring what happens, but actively loving it for the strength it builds. Now fast forward to today. Imagine losing a job you thought defined you. The initial blow is real. Stoicism doesn't deny pain. But here's the twist. What if that layoff forces you to explore a skill you'd neglected, leading to work that aligns with your values? Or a failed project that reveals a blind spot, making your next attempt bulletproof? The Stoic approach flips the script. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" you ask, "What can this make of me?" That's the alchemy of Amor Fati, turning leaden moments into gold by refusing to see them as anything less than fuel for growth. Nietzsche, who called this idea his formula for greatness, put it starkly: "My formula for human excellence is to love one's fate." Notice the wording: not tolerate, not survive, but love. That's the radical shift. When a career pivot feels like a demotion, Amor Fati asks you to mine it for lessons. When a relationship ends, it nudges you to appreciate the space it clears for something truer. Even in small frustrations, a cancelled flight, a missed opportunity, this mindset trains you to spot the hidden invitation, to practice patience, creativity, or humility. Marcus Aurelius didn't have a gratitude journal, he had a challenge journal. He wrote things like, "The things which hurt instruct." That's the heartbeat of Amor Fati, trusting that life isn't happening to you but for you. Modern psychology echoes this with post-traumatic growth research, showing how adversity often catalyzes strengths we'd never develop in comfort. The difference. Stoicism doesn't wait for hindsight. It chooses in advance to meet every circumstance as a collaborator rather than an enemy. So how do you practice this? Start with reframing just one inconvenience today: traffic jam, that's uninterrupted podcast time, a critical email, a chance to refine your communication. Even chronic pain or illness, while undeniably hard, can become a teacher of patience or empathy. The goal isn't to pretend hardship doesn't sting, it's to stretch your perspective until you see the sting itself as part of the medicine. As Seneca wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." Amor Fati is the decision to stop fighting the weights and start lifting them, because somewhere in the struggle, you're being forged into someone who no longer fears the fire. Picture standing at the edge of a high dive for the first time. Your stomach drops just imagining the plunge. Now imagine doing that every morning willingly as mental training. That's Premeditatio Malorum, the Stoic practice of vividly anticipating challenges before they happen. Far from pessimism, it's like a fire drill for the mind. Seneca, who called this rehearsing adversity in advance, compared it to a sailor checking the weather before setting sail. You're not inviting storms, you're sharpening your ability to navigate them. Modern psychology even backs this up. Studies show that visualizing obstacles boosts resilience. Much like athletes who mentally rehearse both victories and setbacks perform better under pressure. Consider how Silicon Valley giants use pre-mortems, imagining a project has already failed to pinpoint vulnerabilities before they happen. That's Premeditatio Malorum in a boardroom. Or take parenting. Envisioning a toddler's meltdown in the grocery store doesn't make you a cynic. It helps you pack snacks and patience. The Stoics weren't preparing for misery, they were inoculating themselves against shock. As Seneca wrote, the person who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive. Here's the twist: this practice doesn't just soften blows, it reveals hidden agency. When you mentally walk through losing your job, you might realize you'd finally start that side hustle. Visualizing a conflict with a friend could show you where to set clearer boundaries. Even reflecting on mortality, a Stoic staple isn't morbid. It's a wake-up call to stop postponing what matters. The goal isn't to dwell on darkness, but to flick on the lights before entering the basement, so nothing catches you off guard. Try this today. Pick one mundane stressor, a missed deadline, a tense conversation, and spend 2 minutes imagining it unfolding. Notice where your mind races to solutions or coping strategies you'd normally only discover in the heat of the moment. That's the magic of negative visualization. It turns future chaos into present clarity. As the Stoics knew, comfort zones aren't safe, they're traps. Stepping into discomfort, even in your imagination, is how you grow roots that won't snap when the winds come. Epictetus once said, "Freedom isn't secured by filling up on what you lack, but by shedding what you don't need." That's the essence of the Stoic discipline of desire, a sharp contrast to the endless chase for more that defines modern life. Think about how today's world operates. Ads scream at us to upgrade, social media flaunts curated perfection, and entire industries profit by convincing us we're incomplete without their products. The Stoics called this pleonexia, the insatiable hunger for externals, and they saw it as the root of frustration. Their solution, aligning desire with virtue, not vanity. For Epictetus, who taught from a battered wooden stool in ancient Greece, true wealth wasn't about accumulating possessions but refining character. He asked his students a brutal question: if you could have all the money and status in the world, but at the cost of your integrity, would you still want it? That's the litmus test. Consider minimalism not as a trendy aesthetic, but as a lived expression of Stoic principles. When you pare down to essentials, you're not just decluttering a closet, you're decluttering the mind. Every item you don't buy is a decision you won't regret, a payment you won't stress over, a weight you won't carry. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who lived as simply as his students, put it plainly: the person who has the fewest wants is closest to the gods. Notice he didn't say the person with the most willpower. Stoicism isn't about white-knuckled deprivation, it's about wanting differently. It's the shift from craving a luxury car to craving self-mastery, from envying a neighbor's vacation to cultivating gratitude for your own breath. This discipline isn't just philosophical, it's physiological. Neurologically, every purchase triggers a dopamine hit, but that rush fades faster each time, trapping us in a cycle of craving and disappointment. The Stoics anticipated this 2 millennia before brain scans. They knew external desires are like drinking salt water. The more you indulge, the thirstier you become. Modern research confirms it. Studies show experiences bring lasting joy, while material purchases often lead to buyer's remorse, not contentment. So how do you practice this today? Start with one deliberate no. Skip the impulse buy and sit with the discomfort of wanting. Notice how the urge peaks, then passes. Proof that desire isn't a command, but a suggestion. Or try inverting your envy. Next time you covet someone's success, ask what you truly admire, their integrity or their Instagram highlights. The goal isn't to eliminate desire, but to redirect it toward what's truly nourishing: growth, connection, contribution. As Epictetus reminded us, he is rich who is content with little. That's the quiet rebellion of Stoic desire, not against pleasure, but against the tyranny of needing it to be happy. Marcus Aurelius once scolded himself in his journal with a line that cuts through centuries of procrastination. Stop arguing what a good person should be, just be one. That's the heartbeat of the Stoic discipline of action, not passive reflection, but deliberate movement toward what's right. Notice he didn't say, be perfect or wait until you're certain. The Stoics understood that wisdom without action is like a ship that never leaves the dock. Today, we'd call this bias toward action, but with a crucial difference. Modern hustle culture often glorifies motion for motion's sake, while Stoic action is deeply intentional. It asks two questions: is this necessary? Is this virtuous? Whether you're leading a team or building a life, that filter changes everything. Consider how this plays out in modern leadership. A Stoic CEO isn't just chasing quarterly targets, they're asking whether their decisions uplift people or merely exploit them. A team member doesn't just complete tasks, they choose projects that align with their growth. Even in entrepreneurship, where move fast and break things became a mantra, Stoic action offers a counterbalance: build things that deserve to last. When the Roman general Cotto marched into battle, he carried Seneca's writings in his saddlebag not as inspiration, but as a reminder that strength without ethics is just violence with better branding. Here's where Stoicism shatters the myth of passivity. The discipline of action isn't about waiting for the right moment, it's about creating it. Think of a nurse choosing kindness during a hectic shift, or a teacher tailoring a lesson for one struggling student. These aren't grand gestures, but they're Stoic actions in their purest form. Small, consistent choices that weave integrity into daily life. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet his journal fixates on ordinary moments, showing up fully, listening deeply, resisting petty grievances. That's the paradox. Stoic action often looks unremarkable from the outside, but it's revolutionary in its cumulative effect. So how do you practice this today? Start by auditing your to-do list with Stoic eyes. Which tasks are just busy work, and which ones align with your core values? If you value learning, does scrolling social media rank higher than reading? If family matters, does your calendar reflect it? The Stoics didn't confuse activity with achievement. They measured action by its ripples, not just what it accomplished, but what it revealed about who they were becoming. As Epictetus put it, you're not your job title, you're the sum of your choices. Now, zoom out further. In a world that often rewards shortcuts, Stoic action is the quiet rebellion of doing things the right way even when no one's watching. It's the entrepreneur who rejects a shady deal to protect their reputation, or the artist who ships imperfect work rather than endlessly tweaking. This discipline isn't about rigid rules, it's about anchoring your motion to meaning. So here's your challenge. Before your next decision, pause and ask not just does this work, but does this honor who I want to be? That's how philosophy moves from the page to your bones, one intentional step at a time. Ever notice how a single email can hijack your entire mood? That visceral reaction, flushed cheeks, racing thoughts, is exactly what the Stoics called the first movement of emotion. And here's the catch: between that spark and your full-blown reaction, there's a sliver of space. The discipline of assent is about widening that space into a runway for wisdom. Epictetus put it bluntly, it's not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. In other words, you don't just feel angry, you agree to be angry. Modern neuroscience confirms this. When someone cuts you off in traffic, your amygdala fires a threat signal, but you have about 90 milliseconds to either amplify that signal with mental commentary, "What a jerk," or let it pass like a wave. That's Stoic mindfulness in action, not the absence of emotion, but the art of interrogating it before letting it take the wheel. Take something as universal as road rage. You're stuck in traffic, late for a meeting. Your grip tightens on the steering wheel as your mind spins stories about incompetence and injustice. Now imagine hitting pause in that moment. What if the driver who merged aggressively is rushing to the hospital? What if this delay saves you from an accident up ahead? The Stoics called this procession the practice of attention to your own judgments. It's not about suppressing frustration. It's about seeing it as a hypothesis rather than a verdict. Research on emotional intelligence echoes this. High EQ individuals don't avoid negative emotions. They metabolize them, asking, "Is this reaction serving me?" Epictetus, who taught that men are disturbed not by things but by the views they take of them, used a vivid analogy. Imagine walking past a ship's cargo hold and seeing broken pottery. You might think, what a shame, but if you knew those jars held decomposing corpses, your reaction would flip entirely. Same jars, different story. That's the power of assent, realizing you're not at the mercy of events, but of the narratives you glue to them. Modern therapy techniques like cognitive restructuring are essentially Stoicism repackaged, helping people spot unhelpful thought patterns. This always happens to me. And rewrite them. This is inconvenient, but I can handle it. Here's the practical takeaway. Next time your phone buzzes with a stressful notification, try this 3-step Stoic pause. First, notice the physical reaction, maybe a clenched jaw or quickened pulse. Second, name the judgment fueling it. I'm telling myself this ruins my whole day. Third, negotiate. Ask, would I advise my best friend to react this way? Is there a more constructive story here? This isn't about positive thinking, it's about accurate thinking. Marcus Aurelius practiced this with his famous morning ritual, telling himself in advance that he'd encounter noisy, selfish people, not to resent them, but to expect them as naturally as a baker expects flour on his hands. The beauty of this discipline, it turns daily irritations into a gym for wisdom. A rude comment becomes a chance to practice patience. A missed deadline trains adaptability. Even grief, when met with conscious assent, can carve deeper compassion into your character. As Seneca wrote, "Fire tests gold, adversity tests the strong." The next time life hands you an emotional spark, remember, you hold the bellows. You decide whether to fan flames or let it glow quietly into insight. That's the quiet power of assent, not controlling the world, but mastering your partnership with it. The ancient Stoics had a practice that might sound jarring at first, keeping a skull on their desk or ending feasts with a reminder that one day the party would end. They called it Memento Mori, remember you must die. But here's the surprising twist. This wasn't about morbidity, it was about liberation. By confronting the certainty of death head-on, they stripped away the illusion of endless time, revealing what truly mattered. Imagine waking up every morning not with vague anxiety about your to-do list, but with crystalline clarity. If this were my last year, what would I stop tolerating? What would I finally say? That's the power of Memento Mori, not as a dark cloud but as a spotlight. Modern innovators have quietly adopted this practice. Take Tim Ferriss, the entrepreneur and author who starts his day by journaling. What if this were my last day? Not to dwell on endings but to sharpen his focus. Or consider the tech CEO who keeps a countdown clock in her office, not counting down to a product launch, but to her estimated lifespan. Morbid, hardly. It's a filter for decision-making. When faced with a petty argument or a low-impact task, she asks, "Is this how I'd spend my time if I knew the clock was ticking?" The answer becomes immediate and obvious. At its core, Memento Mori isn't about death at all, it's about life. The Stoics knew that eternity is a concept, but today is a reality. Seneca wrote, "You act like mortals in all you fear, and like immortals in all you desire." We postpone hard conversations, delay creative projects, and tolerate half-hearted relationships, assuming there'll always be a later. Memento Mori shatters that myth. It's the reason Steve Jobs famously asked, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I'm about to do? When the answer was no too many days in a row, he changed course. Try this reframe: mortality isn't a threat, it's the ultimate accountability partner. Picture a sculptor facing a block of marble. Knowing the material is finite doesn't paralyze them, it forces precision. Every strike of the chisel carries weight. That's how the Stoics viewed time. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think, not as a morbid ultimatum, but as an invitation to edit ruthlessly." The trivial falls away, the essential rises, so here's your challenge. Pick one area where you've been hesitating: a career leap, a tough conversation, a creative risk, and ask, if I had a year left, would I still be waiting? The answer might not change your path, but it will change your urgency, because Memento Mori doesn't just remind us we'll die. It reminds us we're alive, right now, with hands capable of shaping whatever comes next. And that's not dark, that's electric. Imagine a philosophy so robust that it doesn't just help you survive chaos, it helps you thrive because of it. That's Stoic resilience, the original blueprint for what Nassim Taleb would later call anti-fragility. While modern self-help often focuses on bouncing back, the Stoics went further. They taught that the right kind of struggle doesn't just leave you unbroken, it forges you into something stronger. Seneca, who faced exile, chronic illness, and eventual execution by his own student, wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." He wasn't romanticizing suffering, he was revealing its hidden curriculum. The storms we weather aren't just obstacles, they're the whetstones that sharpen our character. Think about how differently we approach adversity today. A job loss triggers panic, a breakup feels like failure, a missed opportunity seems like the end of the road. Now contrast that with the Stoic lens. When the philosopher Musonius Rufus was banished to a barren island, he didn't lament his fate, he started a school. Exile became his classroom. Epictetus, born into slavery, turned his suffering into a masterclass on inner freedom. These weren't superhuman feats, they were choices. The same principle applies now. That layoff, it might be the nudge toward entrepreneurship you needed. The failed project, a lesson in resilience that no MBA could teach. Stoicism reframes adversity as information, not about the world's unfairness, but about your own capacity to adapt and grow. Journaling was the Stoics' secret weapon for building this resilience. Marcus Aurelius' Meditations wasn't written for publication. It was his private training ground where he processed setbacks and reinforced his principles. Today, science confirms what the Stoics knew. Expressive writing reduces stress, clarifies thinking, and even strengthens immune function. But there's a key difference between modern journaling and the Stoic approach. While many gratitude journals focus solely on positivity, Stoic writing leans into discomfort. It asks, what did this challenge reveal about my strength? Where did I let fear override wisdom? Try this tonight. Instead of just listing daily wins, write about one difficulty and dissect it like a Stoic. What was within your control? What judgment made it feel unbearable? How might this prepare you for future storms? The brilliance of Stoic resilience lies in its dual focus. It's not just about enduring hardship, it's about mining it for wisdom. When Seneca advised his friend Lucilius to let difficulties know you've come to conquer, not to complain, he was outlining a radical mindset. Modern psychology calls this stress inoculation. The Stoics called it living. Every inconvenience, from traffic jams to tech failures, becomes a micro-lab for practicing calm. Every betrayal or disappointment trains your discernment in choosing trust. Even illness, a constant companion in the ancient world, taught the Stoics to cherish each day without clinging to it. Here's the invitation. Next time life delivers a blow, pause and ask not, why is this happening to me? But what is this preparing me for? That shift doesn't erase the pain, but it does illuminate the path through it. Because resilience isn't something you're born with, it's something you build brick by brick in the quiet moments between the storms. And as the Stoics proved, the stronger your foundation, the taller you'll stand when the winds come. Marcus Aurelius had a secret weapon for cutting through life's noise, one he called the view from above. Picture standing on a mountain peak at dawn, watching the world unfold beneath you. From that height, bustling cities shrink to tiny grids, rivers become delicate threads, and whatever felt like chaos moments ago now moves with quiet, almost choreographed precision. That's the essence of this practice, zooming out mentally until your problems lose their suffocating scale and reveal their true proportion. The emperor would use this exercise daily, imagining himself rising above Rome's cobblestone streets to see his empire and his place in it from the vantage point of the stars. What seemed urgent from ground level often looked trivial from the stratosphere. Modern science backs this ancient hack. Psychologists call it psychological distancing, and studies show it reduces emotional reactivity by activating the brain's problem-solving regions. CEOs use org charts to see how their role fits into larger systems. Astronauts describe the overview effect, a profound shift in perspective after seeing Earth from space. Even mindfulness apps guide users to imagine their thoughts as passing clouds. These are all echoes of Marcus' technique. The goal isn't to dismiss your struggles, but to see them in context. That argument with your partner from 10,000 feet, it's a fleeting ripple in a shared life. The project that consumed your week, a single brushstroke in a much larger canvas. Here's where nature's wisdom comes in. A storm feels catastrophic to an ant hill, but to the oak tree on the ridge, it's just weather. The Stoics recognize this scalability of perspective. When you're stuck in traffic, seething at the delay, try this. Picture Earth from orbit, a blue marble spinning through space with billions of lives unfolding simultaneously. Your commute becomes one thread in an unimaginably vast tapestry. Does that make the traffic vanish? No, but it shifts your relationship to the frustration, loosening its grip. So how do you apply this today? Start small. Next time a problem feels all-consuming, close your eyes and mentally fly above it. See your neighborhood from rooftop height, then city level, then country scale. Notice how your challenge changes shape when surrounded by sprawl, seasons, centuries. Ask, will this matter in a month, a decade, to those who come after me? The view from above isn't about diminishing your experience, it's about expanding your capacity to hold it without being crushed. Marcus knew this better than anyone. Despite the weight of an empire on his shoulders, he wrote, "Think of the universe as one living being and how all things work together." That's the ultimate gift of this practice, not just relief from today's stress, but the quiet awe of realizing you're part of something too vast for pettiness to endure. Your struggles haven't vanished, but now you see the path through them, not as a trapped participant, but as a guide who's touched the sky. History offers us remarkable examples of what it looks like to live with Stoic purpose, not in theory, but in the messy reality of human existence. Take Cato the Younger, the Roman senator who became a living symbol of integrity. When Julius Caesar marched on Rome, sparking civil war, Cato didn't just oppose him politically, he refused to compromise his principles even as the republic crumbled around him. On the night of his death, he didn't rage against his fate. He calmly read Plato's dialogue on the immortality of the soul, then took his own life rather than surrender to tyranny. But here's what's often overlooked. Cato wasn't born unshakable. He trained himself through daily practice, sleeping on hard beds, wearing plain clothing, deliberately facing discomfort to strengthen his resolve. His power came not from perfection, but from relentless commitment to growth. Then there's Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, whose story begins with literal shipwreck. A wealthy merchant who lost everything at sea, he wandered into a bookstore in Athens and discovered philosophy. Instead of wallowing in self-pity, he built a new life around wisdom, teaching students in the painted porch, the Stoa Poikile that gave Stoicism its name. What makes Zeno extraordinary isn't that he avoided suffering, but that he transformed it into the foundation of a philosophy that would endure for millennia. These weren't marble statues of virtue, they were flesh and blood humans who chose again and again to align their actions with their values regardless of circumstance. Now fast forward to modern figures who channel this same spirit. Consider basketball legend Kobe Bryant, whose Mamba mentality echoed Stoic discipline, not just in training his body but in mastering his mind. After a devastating injury, he studied film and adjusted his game rather than lamenting lost agility. Or look to humanitarian figures like Nelson Mandela, who spent 27 years in prison refining his character, emerging not with bitterness but with a vision for reconciliation. What links these figures across centuries isn't fame or talent. It's their shared understanding that purpose isn't found in applause, but in the quiet dignity of how you meet each challenge. The key lesson: we're not meant to copy their specific paths, but to emulate their commitment to virtue. Marcus Aurelius warned against worshipping heroes blindly. Don't go around saying the world owes you a Socrates. Maybe it does, but your job is to be the best version of yourself. That's the heart of Stoic role models. They're not idols to put on pedestals, but proof that ordinary people can achieve extraordinary resilience through daily practice. When you admire an athlete's work ethic or an activist's courage, you're seeing Stoicism in action. The question isn't, how can I replicate their success? But how can I cultivate their strength of character in my own context? This distinction matters because our culture often confuses imitation with inspiration. We chase someone else's career, relationships, or lifestyle without examining whether it aligns with our deepest values. The Stoic alternative: study how your role models handle adversity, not just how they celebrate victories. Notice how they prepare when no one's watching. Focus on the roots of their greatness, their discipline, their honesty, their willingness to fail rather than just the fruits. As Epictetus put it, first say who you want to be, then do what you must do. That's how you move from admiring virtue to embodying it, one deliberate choice at a time. Epictetus spent his childhood in chains, literally. Born into slavery, he endured a master who twisted his leg until it broke, leaving him permanently lame. Yet when students later pitied him for this disability, his response stunned them. Lameness is an impediment to the leg, but not to the will. In that moment, he crystallized a Stoic truth that every barrier contains a hidden door. The very thing we curse as misfortune often carries the seeds of our strength. Fast forward 2,000 years, and you'll find the same principle in Silicon Valley's so-called failure culture. When a startup collapses, founders don't hide the scars, they display them like badges of honor, because that bankruptcy taught them financial discipline, that product flop revealed a deeper market need. As Ryan Holiday titled his modern Stoic manifesto, the obstacle is the way, not around the obstacle, not despite it, through it. Consider how this plays out in daily life. A musician loses hearing like Beethoven and discovers vibrations through bone conduction, composing symphonies deaf ears will never hear. An athlete blows out her knee and reinvents herself as a sports psychologist, helping others navigate the mental game she once took for granted. Even mundane frustrations follow this pattern. That meeting cancellation, unexpected time to refine your proposal, the critical feedback, a roadmap for growth you wouldn't have seen on your own. The Stoics didn't just tolerate setbacks, they reverse-engineered them, asking not why me, but what now? Here's the critical nuance: this isn't toxic positivity. Stoicism doesn't pretend adversity feels good. It simply recognizes that comfort rarely builds character. When Seneca wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction," he wasn't saying the polishing feels pleasant, he was noting its necessity. Modern research confirms this. Post-traumatic growth studies show that people who have weathered crises often develop resilience, empathy, and clarity unimaginable before the storm. The key difference: Stoicism doesn't wait for hindsight. It trains you to spot the opportunity while you're still in the struggle. So here's your challenge this week. Pick one current obstacle: a strained relationship, a stalled project, even a daily irritation like commute traffic, and interrogate it like a Stoic. What skill could this difficulty help you practice? Patience, creativity, detachment. Maybe that argument with your partner is a chance to hone communication, or the delayed flight is forcing you to finally read that book gathering dust in your bag. The obstacle isn't just in your way, it is the way, and the moment you stop resisting it, you'll start moving. Imagine carrying on a conversation with your wisest self every night, not just reviewing your day, but actively shaping how you'll meet tomorrow. That's the heart of Stoic journaling, a practice that transformed Marcus Aurelius' private reflections into meditations, one of history's most enduring works of philosophy. His journal wasn't filled with fluffy affirmations or venting. It was a rigorous training ground where he dissected his reactions, corrected his biases, and realigned with his principles. The brilliance of his approach: you don't need to rule an empire to benefit from it. A notebook and 5 honest minutes can become your own laboratory for growth. Start with this simple nightly prompt: what truly depended on me today? Not the traffic, not your boss's mood, but where you chose focus over distraction, patience over irritation. Maybe you caught yourself complaining about a delayed delivery, then remembered the postal worker had no control over the weather. That shift in perspective is Stoic journaling in action, spotting the gap between what happened and how you framed it. Marcus did this relentlessly, writing notes like, "Today I will meet interference, ingratitude, and arrogance, but I cannot be angry, for I too am part of the problem unless I choose otherwise." For beginners, 3 questions can anchor the practice. First, what went well and was it within my control? This isn't about positivity, it's about identifying agency. Celebrate the effort you put into a presentation, not the applause. Second, where did I react poorly and what judgment fueled that reaction? Maybe a coworker's critique stung because you tied your worth to perfection. Third, how can I prepare for tomorrow's challenges? Marcus would visualize setbacks in advance, not to worry, but to rehearse his composure. Try scripting your ideal response to a likely friction point. If my meeting runs late, I'll reschedule calmly rather than rushing and arriving flustered. The power of this practice lies in its repetition. Like a blacksmith tempering steel, each session strengthens your ability to separate events from interpretations. Over time, you'll spot patterns. Perhaps you default to blame when tired, or your best decisions come after pausing to question first impulses. Seneca called this digesting life, and modern research agrees. Reflective writing reduces stress hormones while boosting problem solving. But unlike generic journaling, Stoic reflection has teeth. It's not enough to write, "I was annoyed." You must ask why that annoyance felt justified, then challenge the assumption. Consider the executive who journals after a failed negotiation. A typical entry might rant about unfair terms. A Stoic entry would ask, "Did I confuse my plan with the only possible outcome?" What can I learn about their priorities? Or the parent who snaps at their child. Instead of guilt spiraling, they'd examine, was my reaction about their behavior or my exhaustion? This isn't self-criticism, it's self-coaching. The page becomes a mirror showing not just your face, but the lenses through which you see the world. Marcus' meditation survives because it's raw, not polished. He scolds himself for sleeping in, marvels at the beauty of bread crust, and reminds himself that fame is fleeting. That's the invitation, to meet yourself on the page with equal parts honesty and compassion. Your journal won't judge you for missteps, it will simply ask, now that you see them, what will you do differently? Start small. A single sentence that names one controlled action today plants the seed. Water it nightly and watch your clarity grow. Seneca's sharpest critique wasn't aimed at tyrants or criminals. It was reserved for people who complained about life being too short while frittering away hours on trivialities. In On the Shortness of Life, he wrote, "It's not that we have too little time, but that we waste so much of it." 2,000 years later, his words land like a gut punch. Modern productivity gurus preach hacks and hustle, but Stoic time management starts with a radical question. Are you busy with outputs or outcomes? The difference is everything. You can cram your calendar with meetings and emails, yet still feel like you've accomplished nothing. Seneca called this being busy in the ruins of your own life. Consider how easily we confuse motion with progress, scrolling social media for industry research, attending conferences out of obligation, or obsessively tweaking slide decks that never get seen. These aren't just time wasters, they're identity theft. They steal the limited hours you could spend mastering a skill, deepening relationships, or creating something meaningful. The Stoic solution isn't another scheduling app, it's a ruthless audit. Imagine your time as currency. Would you trade an hour of your life for that passive-aggressive email chain, for the 20th rewatch of a mediocre show? Seneca's warning cuts deep. You're living as if destined to live forever, yet no day belongs to you. Here's where Stoicism flips modern productivity advice on its head. Most systems focus on doing more faster. Stoics ask, why are you doing this at all? A CEO might pride themselves on waking at 4 a.m. to crush their inbox, but if those emails are just bureaucratic wheels spinning, they're not productive, they're professionally numbing. Contrast this with the artist who blocks off 3 undisturbed morning hours for deep work, knowing that even one page of authentic writing outweighs a week of performative busyness. The Stoic measure of time well spent isn't crossed off to-do lists, its alignment with purpose. Try this audit inspired by Seneca's 3 jars exercise. Label 3 mental containers: essentials, what sustains your body and soul; contributions, what serves others or your legacy; and distractions, everything else. For 1 week, track your hours in these categories. You'll likely find meetings bleeding into time reserved for health, or late nights lost to political Twitter debates that leave you drained but no wiser. The goal isn't to eliminate leisure, even Stoics cherish downtime, but to ensure it rejuvenates rather than depletes. As Musonius Rufus taught, even rest should be deliberate. Better to sleep well than badly, to eat with purpose rather than mindlessly. The ultimate Stoic time hack: treat each day as if it were a complete life, with its own sunrise, struggle, and sunset. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "At dawn, remind yourself, the people I deal with today will be ungrateful, arrogant, and deceitful, but I can meet them with kindness anyway." That's not pessimism, it's presence. When you stop postponing meaning to some distant "when I have time," today becomes the only workspace you'll ever need. So ask yourself, what trivialities have been masquerading as priorities, and what would happen if you reclaimed even 1 stolen hour to invest in something that outlasts you? The Stoics saw relationships not as accidental connections, but as the very fabric where philosophy comes alive, where abstract ideas about justice and kindness meet the messy reality of human interaction. Consider Hierocles, the Stoic philosopher who drew concentric circles to represent our bonds. Self at the center, then family, neighbors, community, and finally all humanity. His radical idea that wisdom isn't about retreating inward, but about deliberately drawing these circles closer together. Treating a stranger's concerns as seriously as a sibling's, recognizing that every interaction is a chance to practice virtue in real time. Picture a workplace where a manager doesn't just delegate tasks but actively mentors, seeing their role as expanding their team's circles rather than just hitting quotas. That's Stoic empathy in action, not sentimental niceness, but a disciplined recognition that others' well-being is tied to our own. Modern relationships often suffer from transactional thinking, keeping score in friendships, viewing networking as purely strategic, or dismissing difficult family members as toxic. The Stoic alternative, justice as a verb, when Epictetus said, "What's bad for the hive is bad for the bee," he wasn't preaching self-sacrifice, he was highlighting an inescapable truth: we thrive only in connection. Imagine a parent dealing with a rebellious teen. The easy response might be punishment or guilt-tripping. The Stoic approach, first asking, "What's within my control here?" Not the child's choices, but their own reactions, listening without interrupting, setting boundaries without ego, modeling the accountability they hope to inspire. It's relationships as a daily gym for character. Hierarchical circles hold special power today, when digital life can make neighbors feel like distant concepts and global crises like abstract headlines. The Stoic practice, contracting the outer circles inward. That barista who gets your coffee wrong. Instead of irritation, try picturing their unseen stresses: the rent due, the sleepless night with a sick child. A colleague who takes credit for your idea. Before reacting, consider Marcus Aurelius' morning reminder. When people injure you, ask yourself what good or harm they thought would come of it. You'll see their humanity, and suddenly their actions make sense, not as right but as understandable. This isn't about excusing poor behavior, it's about refusing to let others' limitations dictate your integrity. Now bring this into your own life with a simple audit. Draw your circles literally or mentally and notice where the gaps are. Maybe you're generous with donations to global causes but impatient with your partner's quirks. Or perhaps you champion workplace inclusivity yet overlook the new employee eating lunch alone. The Stoic question isn't, "Am I a good person?" but "Where can I stretch my concern today?" Start small. One unprompted kindness to someone in your outer circles, one conversation where you listen more than speak, one moment of assuming good intent before judgment. As Seneca wrote to his friend Lucilius, "Wherever there is a human being, there's an opportunity for kindness." That's the quiet revolution of Stoic relationships, transforming everyday interactions from transactions into the very practice of living well. What if true wealth had nothing to do with your bank balance? The Stoics measured prosperity by an entirely different metric, not by what you could acquire, but by how little you needed to be content. Musonius Rufus, the philosopher who lived as simply as his students, put it bluntly: "The wealth of the soul is the only true wealth." This wasn't poetic idealism, it was a practical insight. While modern hustle culture glorifies sleepless nights and conspicuous consumption, Stoic wealth whispers a radical alternative. Freedom isn't found in more, but in enough. Consider how we've been conditioned to equate success with accumulation. Social media flaunts luxury cars and designer labels, while influencers preach rise and grind, as if exhaustion were a badge of honor. The Stoics saw through this 2,000 years ago. Seneca, one of Rome's richest men, warned that craving wealth is like drinking seawater. The more you consume, the thirstier you become. He didn't renounce money, he renounced letting it define him. There's a telling story about him hosting a dinner where guests were served simple food on broken dishes. When one complained, Seneca replied, "To crave luxury is to admit you can be impoverished by its absence." That's the heart of Stoic wealth, not rejecting resources, but refusing to let them dictate your peace. Here's where the modern financial independence movement gets it half right. Early retirement appeals because it promises freedom, yet many still chase it through endless accumulation, as if joy waits on the far side of some arbitrary net worth number. The Stoic version is simpler. Independence begins the moment you stop conflating wants with needs. Try this experiment today. For 24 hours, track every time you feel the itch to spend, not just on big purchases, but the habitual coffee upgrade, the impulsive app purchase, the just one more Amazon click. Notice how many of these cravings stem from boredom, insecurity, or social pressure rather than actual necessity. That's the hustle culture trap, mistaking motion for meaning and consumption for fulfillment. Musonius Rufus took this further, advocating for deliberate hardship to strengthen resolve. He'd have his students sleep on hard beds, wear plain clothing, and fast occasionally, not as punishment but as immunity training against excess. You don't need to go full ascetic to benefit. Start with a spending fast, 1 week where you buy only essentials. You'll quickly spot the difference between "I need this" and "I've been trained to want this." Or try a gratitude audit each evening. List 3 things you already own that brought genuine value to your day: a well-loved book, a reliable pair of shoes. Sunlight through your window. The goal isn't to romanticize poverty, but to recognize that prosperity flourishes when you stop moving the finish line. The ultimate Stoic wealth hack: measuring your riches not by what fills your closet, but by what doesn't empty your soul. As Epictetus, who owned nothing but a wooden stool, taught his students, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. That's the quiet rebellion of Stoic prosperity, realizing you're already rich every time you choose contentment over craving. Cleans, the second leader of Stoicism, wasn't just a philosopher. He was a water carrier who pumped wells by night to fund his studies by day. His calloused hands and aching back weren't inconveniences. They were proof that wisdom and labor could coexist. The Stoics saw physical health not as a vanity project, but as a duty, a way to ensure the body could reliably serve the mind and community. Imagine modern functional training stripped of mirrors and ego. Squats to lift grandchildren, endurance to outlast crises, grip strength to carry groceries for an elderly neighbor. That's Stoic fitness, strength with a purpose beyond the gym. Today's fitness culture often fixates on metrics disconnected from real life: bicep circumference, six-pack visibility, marathon times that leave joints creaking. The Stoic alternative: training for life's actual demands. A firefighter doesn't deadlift to fill out jeans, they train to haul victims from burning buildings. A nurse builds endurance not for Instagram, but for 12-hour shifts where fatigue could mean a missed Roman IV line. Even something as simple as carrying laundry upstairs reveals functional gaps most workouts ignore. The question shifts from "how do I look" to "what can this body do?" Marcus Aurelius, who ruled Rome through wars and plagues, wrote, "Your body is not yours to abuse, but to steward like a borrowed tool you must return intact." This philosophy transforms exercise from a chore into a moral act. When you choose vegetables over fast food, you're not just avoiding calories, you're honoring the only vehicle your mind will ever have. When you strength train, you're preparing to lift a friend's wheelchair or move disaster debris. Cleans didn't resent manual labor. He recognized it as primal resistance training that funded his higher calling. Modern equivalents abound: the construction worker who treats each workday as functional fitness, the parent who squats to toddler level instead of bending their spine. Even walking, the most Stoic exercise of all, becomes meditative when framed as preparation for life's long marches. Here's the litmus test: next time you exercise, ask, what virtue does this movement cultivate? Deadlifts teach discipline under load, the same grit needed to endure life's emotional weights. Yoga stretches patience as much as hamstrings. Even rest days become Stoic when they model self-respect over ego. Because ultimately, a fit body isn't an end goal. It's the foundation for everything else you're called to do. As Epictetus, who walked with a limp from slavery, reminded his students, "You are not just a soul carrying a body, but a partnership, and neither can thrive while neglecting the other." Ancient Rome never needed leadership seminars because their greatest emperor wrote the playbook in real time while ruling an empire at war. Marcus Aurelius led not from a throne, but from the front lines of battle, penning wisdom in his journal by firelight that still guides CEOs today. His approach defied every stereotype of power: no bluster, no ego, just relentless focus on serving rather than being served. When his troops faced starvation, he sold the palace furniture to buy grain. When advisors flattered him, he'd scribble reminders like, "Soon you'll be ashes or bones. What difference does praise make?" That Stoic leadership distilled authority exercised with humility, strength tempered by self-restraint. Fast forward to the Vietnam War, where Admiral James Stockdale, a student of Epictetus, faced 7 years as a POW. Tortured routinely, he couldn't control his captors, but he could control how he inspired fellow prisoners. He developed a tap code for communication, organized resistance protocols, and even slit his scalp to make himself unrecognizable after beatings, preventing interrogators from using his battered face to demoralize others. Later, when business schools studied his leadership under extreme duress, Stockdale credited Stoicism. You must never confuse faith that you will prevail with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality. That paradoxical blend, unyielding hope paired with clear-eyed pragmatism, is the hallmark of Stoic leadership. Modern workplaces are rarely life or death, but the principles translate seamlessly. Imagine a tech CEO navigating layoffs. The Stoic leader doesn't hide behind PR statements. They address the team personally, acknowledging the pain while outlining a path forward. They freeze their own salary before cutting staff benefits. They spend weekends writing personalized recommendations for departing employees. Like Marcus Aurelius selling his furniture, these actions aren't grand gestures. They're quiet demonstrations that leadership isn't about privilege but responsibility. The Stoics viewed leadership as stewardship, not status. Epictetus, though he taught future emperors, lived in a simple hut with one wooden stool, his version of management training. First, learn the meaning of what you say before you say it. In today's terms, don't preach work-life balance while emailing your team at midnight. Don't demand innovation while punishing mistakes. Leadership credibility isn't built in town halls, it's forged in the consistency between your words and actions, especially when no one's watching. Consider the hospital administrator who spends one shift monthly working alongside nurses to understand systemic frustrations. Or the startup founder who shares every financial report transparently, trusting her team with the unvarnished truth. These leaders grasp a core Stoic insight. Influence grows when you stop guarding your authority and start empowering others. The test isn't how many people serve you, but how many you've helped become their best selves. So here's your challenge today. Before making a decision, ask Marcus Aurelius' question: is this for the benefit of the hive or just the bee? Maybe it's pausing to mentor a junior colleague instead of rushing to your next meeting, or publicly crediting the team for wins while taking personal accountability for setbacks. True leadership, as the Stoics showed, isn't about being in charge. It's about taking charge of your own character first, so others have a compass worth following. Epictetus once observed, "Circumstances don't make the artist, they reveal the resources already within them." At first glance, Stoicism might seem worlds apart from creativity, with its emphasis on discipline over inspiration. But look closer and you'll find an unexpected truth. The stillness of Stoic practice doesn't stifle creativity. It becomes the fertile ground where deep work takes root. Consider the writer who carves out 2 uninterrupted morning hours, not despite life's chaos, but because of it. They're not waiting for the muse, they're applying the Stoic art of focus, treating their craft like Marcus Aurelius treated governance, as a sacred duty demanding full presence. History's most prolific creators often followed rituals that echo Stoic principles. Beethoven, even as deafness closed in, rose at dawn to compose with mathematical precision, counting coffee beans to measure his daily intake, not for superstition, but to eliminate trivial decisions that might fracture his focus. Maya Angelou rented sparse hotel rooms to write, stripping away distractions until only the work remained. These weren't eccentric habits, they were acts of deliberate ascesis, the Stoic practice of training through constraint. When Epictetus said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so we can listen twice as much as we speak," he might as well have been describing the creative process. True artistry emerges not in noise but in the space between distractions. Modern neuroscience confirms what the Stoics intuited. Flow states, those moments when time dissolves and ideas surge effortlessly, occur most readily when the mind isn't juggling tabs, notifications, and half-formed anxieties. A Stanford study found that multitasking reduces cognitive performance more than sleep deprivation. The Stoic antidote, boundary setting as an act of self-respect. Visual artist James Turrell, known for immersive light installations, refuses to carry a phone, calling it a thief of attention. His studio becomes a kind of secular monastery, a temple for sustained focus where even casual visitors must surrender their devices. This isn't elitism, it's the recognition that creativity isn't a passive gift but a discipline honed through guarded attention. Imagine applying this to your own work. What could you craft if you reclaimed even 30 stolen minutes a day? Not for reactive tasks like emails or social media, but for the kind of concentrated making that leaves fingerprints on your soul. A programmer might block out code caves, hours where they disappear into pure problem solving. A parent might rise before the household to sketch or journal, treating that quiet hour as inviolable. The Stoic twist, these rituals aren't about output alone, they're about integrity. As Seneca wrote to his creative friend Lucilius, only a calm lake reflects the heavens clearly. So here's the invitation: start small but start sacred. Silence your phone's notifications during one creative session this week. Notice how resistance shouts at first, the itch to check, the phantom vibrations. Then watch as the mind, like a startled animal, settles into its natural rhythm. Epictetus' voice rings true across centuries. We are not given a short life, but we make it short by wasting our attention. Your masterpiece, whether it's a novel, a business, or simply a life lived with intention, won't be found in the fragments of divided focus, but in the unbroken thread of moments you dared to fully inhabit. The ancient Stoics had a secret weapon for navigating life's toughest choices, a practice called prosoch, or vigilant attention to the ethical weight of every decision. Picture standing at a crossroads. One path leads to a high-paying job with brutal hours, the other to less prestige but more time with aging parents. Modern culture might frame this as work-life balance, but the Stoics saw it differently. To them, every choice was a test of character, not just convenience. Seneca put it bluntly, deliberation takes time even when speed is necessary. That pause, the space between impulse and action, is where wisdom takes root. Let's make this concrete. Imagine a pharmaceutical executive discovering her company is inflating drug prices. The practical choice might be to stay silent, rationalizing that one person can't change the system. But prosoch demands she ask deeper questions. Does this align with justice? Would I regret this in my final moments? The Stoics didn't expect perfection, but they did demand honesty. Epictetus warned, if you try to be 2 things at once, a virtuous person in theory but a cutthroat in practice, you'll end up as neither. Here's where the virtue checklist simplifies things. Before any major decision, the Stoics would run it through 4 filters. Wisdom: is this informed by truth? Courage: am I acting from fear or conviction? Justice: does this harm or help others? And temperance: is this driven by excess? Apply this to the career dilemma. Taking the demanding job might score high on courage, challenging yourself, but low on justice, neglecting family needs. The checklist isn't about rigid rules, it's about spotlighting trade-offs we often ignore. Modern psychology echoes this. Studies show we're terrible at predicting what will truly fulfill us, often overvaluing salary and undervaluing autonomy or purpose. The Stoic antidote visualized the view from the end. Seneca advised Lucilius to ask, when death comes, will you be proud of this choice? Not in a morbid way, but as a reality check. That executive might realize no eulogy ever praised 80-hour workweeks, but many honor devoted parents or ethical standards. The beauty of prosoch is its scalability. Use it for small choices too. Should I gossip about a coworker to fit in? Temperance says no. Should I speak up about a friend's harmful behavior? Justice says yes. Over time, this practice rewires decision-making from reactive to intentional. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength, not just in grand dilemmas, but in the 1,000 tiny choices that quietly shape who you become. The modern world bombards us with promises of happiness. Buy this product, take that vacation, chase the next thrill. But the Stoics recognized a crucial distinction between fleeting pleasure and something far more enduring. Eudaimonia, a deep-rooted flourishing that comes from living in alignment with virtue. Imagine, for a moment, the difference between the spike of dopamine from a social media like and the quiet satisfaction of helping a stranger carry heavy groceries. One vanishes as quickly as it appears, the other lingers, not because it felt exciting, but because it felt right. Marcus Aurelius captured this perfectly in his private writings. They seek retreats for themselves in the country, by the sea, or in the mountains. But this is altogether unphilosophical when you can at any moment retreat into yourself. Nowhere can a person find a more peaceful or less busy retreat than in their own soul, especially one who can focus on the joy found in right action. That last phrase, joy in the right action, holds the key. Stoic joy isn't about chasing ecstatic highs, it's about uncovering meaning in the mundane. Think of a nurse changing bedpans with the same care she'd give to holding a newborn. Or a teacher grading papers late into the night, not out of obligation, but because she knows each correction might unlock a student's potential. These aren't glamorous moments, yet they carry a weight of fulfillment no luxury purchase could match. The Stoics argued that true joy blooms when we stop dividing life into chores and rewards and start seeing every act as an opportunity to express our values. Consider how we typically frame joy as the opposite of responsibility, something that happens after the work is done. The Stoics flipped this script. For them, duty wasn't a barrier to happiness, it was the very path to it. When Epictetus told his students, first say who you want to be, then do what you must do, he was pointing to the alchemy that happens when actions align with character. There's a reason volunteers often describe feeling more energized after serving meals at a shelter than after a day at the spa. One feeds the transient self, the other nourishes the soul. So here's a challenge. Reflect on your past week. When did duty, not indulgence, bring you joy? Maybe it was the patience you showed a frustrated coworker, or the integrity it took to admit a mistake. These moments often slip by unnoticed because they lack the fanfare of a celebration. Yet they're the building blocks of eudaimonia. The Stoics didn't deny simple pleasures, a good meal, a warm bath, but they knew these were garnishes, not the main course. Real flourishing comes from savoring the quiet pride of a promise kept, the unshakable calm of a truth spoken, or the fierce warmth of standing up for someone who can't. Marcus Aurelius, despite the burdens of empire, wrote of finding joy in the cheerful face, the honest word, the willing deed. No mention of palaces or feasts. Just the luminous ordinary, that's the invitation to stop waiting for joy and start recognizing it in the choices that already define you, not in spite of your responsibilities, but because of them. Epictetus once offered advice so simple it could fit on a postcard, yet so profound it can reshape how we move through the world. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. In an age where hot takes outnumber thoughtful exchanges and digital platforms reward knee-jerk reactions over reflection, this Stoic principle isn't just quaint wisdom, it's a radical act of resistance. Consider how often we mistake verbal output for value, filling silence with unsolicited opinions, rehearsing our next comment instead of hearing the current conversation. The Stoics called this lalia, empty chatter that drains energy without creating connection or insight. There's a reason Marcus Aurelius devoted entire journal entries to scolding himself for speaking without thinking. He wasn't advocating monkish silence, but strategic speech, words measured against 3 filters. Is this true? Is this necessary? Is this kind? Imagine applying that test to today's group chats, work meetings, or social media threads. How much of what we say would pass? The modern workplace offers a telling example. Studies show teams with more equal airtime, where members listen as much as they speak, outperform those dominated by a few loud voices. Yet we still promote the talkers, equating volume with leadership. Stoic silence flips this script. It's the manager who asks probing questions instead of dictating solutions, the friend who holds space for your grief rather than rushing to fix it, the online commenter who pauses to fact-check before sharing outrage. This discipline cuts deeper than etiquette. Gossip, a staple of office culture and reality TV, gets special condemnation from the Stoics. Why? Not because it's mean, but because it's a double theft, robbing time from meaningful pursuits while stealing dignity from absent parties. Seneca warned that those who gossip to you will gossip about you, revealing the transactional nature of such exchanges. The Stoic alternative, redirecting conversations toward ideas rather than individuals. Instead of dissecting a coworker's promotion, discuss what skills you could develop. Rather than complaining about a neighbor's loud music, reflect on how to cultivate patience. Digital noise amplifies these challenges exponentially. Social media algorithms thrive on conflict and controversy, rewarding reactive posts with visibility. The Stoic response: cultivate the pause. Before replying to a provocative tweet, ask, does this add light or just heat? When scrolling, notice how often you're preparing arguments instead of absorbing perspectives. Even podcasts and audiobooks, while valuable, can become another form of input overload if they leave no room for integration. The ancient practice of hesychia, sacred stillness, suggests that wisdom grows not just from consuming content, but from allowing space between stimuli for meaning to crystallize. Here's your challenge for one day: become an archaeologist of listening. Note how often conversations center on complaints versus solutions, judgments versus curiosity. When you're tempted to vent about traffic, try describing something beautiful you noticed instead. In meetings, tally how many minutes are spent truly listening versus waiting to speak. You'll likely discover what Epictetus knew, that most talk is ego in disguise, a way to prove our worth rather than deepen understanding. The quieter you become, the more you'll hear, the unspoken worry in a colleague's voice, the wisdom in your own intuition, the patterns in nature that only reveal themselves to those who stop narrating. Stoic silence isn't about muting yourself, it's about tuning your instrument so when you do speak, the notes resonate. As Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, observed, the reason we have 2 ears and only 1 mouth is so we might hear more and talk less. In a world drowning in words but starved for meaning, that imbalance might just be the compass we've been missing. Stoic travel begins with a paradox: the farther you go, the more you discover what you've brought with you. Seneca saw this clearly when he wrote, "You flee from your own company only to find yourself waiting at every port." His letters reveal a truth modern travelers often miss: no destination can outrun the mind's restless habits. Picture the tourist who photographs every monument without seeing any of them, or the digital nomad who carries the same work anxiety from cafe to beach to co-working space. The Stoic invitation isn't to stop moving, but to let each journey strip away illusions about what truly changes when geography shifts. Consider how we typically approach travel, as an escape from routine, a quest for novelty, or worse, a backdrop for social media validation. The Stoic reframe every trip as a microcosm of life itself, where delayed flights become tests of patience, language barriers reveal the universality of kindness, and lost luggage teaches detachment. When Seneca advised his friend Lucilius to travel light in soul as well as in pack, he wasn't just warning against overstuffed suitcases, he was pointing to the emotional cargo we drag unnoticed, expectations of perfection, the need for control, the fear of missing out. Here's where Stoic travel gets practical. Before your next trip, whether it's across continents or just to a new neighborhood, try this 3-step unpacking exercise. First, list what you're physically bringing, then ask, does each item serve necessity or comfort? Next, name the invisible baggage. What am I hoping this journey will fix about my life? Finally, set one intention unrelated to sights or snaps. How might I practice virtue here? Maybe it's patience with a chatty seatmate, courage to try broken phrases in a local language, or gratitude for safe passage when turbulence hits. The beauty of this approach shines brightest when plans crumble. A cancelled tour becomes an opportunity to wander without agenda. A rainy day forces you to savor the hotel's neglected library. Even jet lag, that universal travel grievance, transforms into enforced stillness, a chance to observe a city's dawn rhythms rather than racing to checkpoints. Marcus Aurelius, who spent years campaigning at Rome's borders, wrote of finding strength in limitation, freedom within constraints. His military travels weren't glamorous escapes, they were masterclasses in adaptability. Now bring this home literally. You don't need a passport to practice Stoic travel. Try a local odyssey. Spend a day in your own city as if it were foreign territory. Ride a bus line to its last stop without checking your phone. Order food you can't pronounce at a family-run diner. Sit in a park and identify 5 textures you've never noticed before. The goal isn't to accumulate experiences, but to sharpen the instrument that processes them, your attention. When Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you relate to what happens," he might as well have been describing the art of mindful wandering. The ultimate Stoic souvenir isn't a fridge magnet or a sunset photo. It's the realization that presence weighs nothing yet enriches everything. As Seneca observed after his own journeys, the person who returns is not the same as the one who left. Not because the scenery changed them, but because they let the act of moving strip away distractions, revealing who they'd been all along. Whether you're crossing time zones or just the street, every step becomes pilgrimage when you carry less and notice more. Cato the Elder didn't just grow old, he grew bold, taking up Greek studies in his 80s because, as he said, it's shameful to carry ignorance into old age. While today's culture obsesses over vanishing wrinkles and chasing youth, the Stoics framed aging as the ultimate apprenticeship, a chance to hone virtues only time can teach. Picture 2 paths, one desperately coloring grays and dreading birthdays, the other embracing silver strands as badges of hard-won perspective. Stoicism invites us to that second path, where maturity isn't loss but liberation from vanity, from trivial rivalries, from the need to prove anything to anyone. Modern anti-aging campaigns sell a peculiar fantasy that the best decade should look identical to our 20s, just with better sunscreen. Ads promise serums to turn back time, while social media floods with filters erasing laughter lines. The Stoics would find this baffling. Seneca mocked those who pray for long life but resent its marks, pointing out the hypocrisy of wanting time's wisdom without its visible touch. There's profound practicality here. Fighting aging is exhausting. Accepting it, that's energy freed for deeper play, mentoring younger colleagues, distilling life's lessons into stories, or like Cato, tackling new skills purely for joy. Consider the virtues uniquely amplified by age. Patience, for starters, not the passive kind, but the active patience of a gardener who knows some seeds need seasons to sprout. Or courage of a different flavor, the bravery to say, "I don't know," after decades of expertise, or to apologize without ego when proven wrong. Even temperance shifts, less about resisting youthful excess, more about curating what truly deserves your dwindling time. A Stoic in their 70s might decline a pointless committee seat not from laziness, but from the disciplined awareness that every yes steals hours from grandkids or neglected hobbies. This isn't about romanticizing decline. Arthritis and memory lapses are real, but Stoicism asks, what if we viewed even these not as insults but as instructors? The slowing body teaches prioritization. Why waste energy on trivial grudges? The fading recall trains presence. Listen fully now, for details may not stick. Contrast this with billionaires pouring fortunes into dodging death, as if longevity were the metric rather than depth. The Stoic alternative: measure life not in years, but in layers of understanding peeled back. Here's your challenge: catalog the virtues your younger self lacked but age could nurture. Maybe it's the humility to take advice from someone half your age, or the calm to soothe a panicked colleague because you've survived a dozen crises. Perhaps it's the humor to laugh at outdated assumptions you once clung to. Every wrinkle could be a footnote in your ongoing education, not in spite of the years, but because of them. As Seneca wrote, time discovers truth, not just about the world, but about who you've chosen to become in it. Marcus Aurelius never built statues of himself, though he ruled the mightiest empire on earth. Instead, he etched a single line in his journal that would outlast marble. What's not good for the hive is not good for the bee. This wasn't poetic flair, it was a radical measuring stick for legacy. While today's culture chases viral moments and LinkedIn accolades, Stoic impact operates differently. It asks not, "How will I be remembered?" but "How does this serve?" Picture a teacher who spends extra hours guiding struggling students without posting about it, or a nurse whose quiet competence makes hospital corridors feel safer. Their influence isn't measured in followers, but in lives quietly transformed. Modern mentorship offers a perfect case study. Silicon Valley idolizes flashy thought leaders, doling out advice on stages, but Stoic legacy grows in the opposite direction, through the unglamorous work of showing up consistently for one person's growth. Take the software engineer who volunteers to tutor teens from underserved schools. She's not just teaching code, she's modeling how to troubleshoot failures without self-recrimination, how to ask for help without shame, skills that ripple outward when those students mentor others. Unlike fame, this kind of impact compounds invisibly. A single hour invested in someone's potential can alter career trajectories generations later. The Stoic twist. The mentor often benefits most. As Seneca wrote to his young protege Lucilius, "By teaching we learn." Volunteering reveals another layer of this legacy paradox. At soup kitchens or animal shelters, the work rarely offers photo ops or networking perks. Yet these spaces become laboratories for practicing Stoic virtues in real time. When you hand a meal to someone experiencing homelessness, you're not just filling stomachs, you're training your own capacity to see humanity in all its forms. Marcus Aurelius, despite his imperial power, made a habit of mentally stripping away titles and status, reminding himself that beneath robes or rags, we all share the same breath. That perspective shift from serving to connecting transforms charity from obligation to mutual transformation. So here's the unasked question lurking behind legacy building: who are you becoming through your impact? A philanthropist donating millions to get their name on a building exercises one kind of power. A retiree reading weekly to hospice patients exercises another, the kind that leaves both reader and listener softer, more seen. The Stoics weren't naive. They knew recognition might come. But like a gardener planting oak trees knowing they'll never sit in their shade, they measured success by roots put down, not applause received. Your legacy isn't what's said at your eulogy, it's what whispers in someone's mind during their toughest choices, long after they've forgotten where the wisdom came from. That's the invitation hidden in Marcus' hive metaphor. Bees don't debate their importance to the ecosystem. They simply do what sustains the whole, knowing their role matters precisely because it's part of something larger. Your greatest influence may never trend on social media. It might live in the way a coworker starts handling stress differently after observing your calm, or how your nephew internalizes resilience from your stories of overcoming failure. The ripples outlast the stone. The question isn't whether you'll leave a mark, but what kind of mark you'll practice leaving today, in the unrecorded moments that actually shape lives. So where does this journey through Stoic wisdom leave us? At its core, living with purpose isn't about grand gestures or perfect conditions. It's about the quiet accumulation of choices that align with our deepest values. The Stoics didn't offer a checklist for happiness. They handed us a compass. Control becomes our North Star, not over external events, but over our responses. Resilience transforms from a reactive shield to an active muscle, strengthened each time we meet adversity with curiosity rather than resistance. And purpose ceases to be a distant finish line, revealing itself instead in the texture of our daily actions. The patience we practice in traffic, the integrity we bring to small tasks, the courage to say, "This isn't for me," even when the crowd roars approval. This philosophy often gets mislabeled as emotionless endurance, but the truth is far more liberating. Stoicism isn't a straitjacket for the soul. It's a toolkit for unshackling ourselves from the chains of unexamined reactions. When Marcus Aurelius scribbled notes to himself about controlling judgments, he wasn't advocating detachment from life. He was mapping a path to engage with it more fully without being hijacked by every passing storm. Imagine the freedom of waking up knowing no external event, a missed promotion, a hurtful comment, even a global crisis, can dictate your inner peace unless you permit it. That's not suppression, that's sovereignty. The beauty of these principles lies in their immediacy. You don't need to retreat to a mountaintop or wait for some idealized future to begin. Start with a notebook beside your bed, one sentence each morning naming an intention, or each evening reflecting on where you exercised agency. Try the view from above the next time a problem feels overwhelming, or the virtue checklist before a tough decision. These aren't just exercises, they're revolutions in miniature, each one subtly rewiring your relationship with the world. Marcus Aurelius left us with a challenge that echoes across centuries. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Notice the verb be, not pretend, not perform, but embody. Stoicism's ultimate gift is the realization that wisdom isn't a trophy to display, but a current to step into. The water's cold at first, yes, but soon you'll feel its buoyancy, the way it carries you through waves that once would have dragged you under. If this exploration resonated with you, consider this your invitation to go deeper. Hit subscribe for more conversations on turning ancient wisdom into modern practice. But more importantly, take one small step today, not toward perfection, but toward presence. The path isn't out there, it's right beneath your feet, waiting for your next mindful step.